Greetings and welcome to Pop's Collection, where we dissect and reflect on a movie or TV show from my Pop's Collection. I'm Ron Tweedy, joining me is Pops, and today we're going to be talking about Episode 5 of Moon Knight, which is labeled Asylum.
Hello, everybody. Glad you're with us. Grab your favorite cup of joe, kick back, and hope you enjoy it. Different show. This is second episode in a row that we really didn't have Moon Knight in the episode, except for one time that I can remember.
Right.
And so would you class this episode as a dark episode?
Very much, yeah.
Yes. And I'm going to say that it's probably an origin episode.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I mean, I think we learned an awful lot of stuff there. I thought it was very enlightening for a dark episode, you know?
Sure.
And we actually get to learn the hippopotamus's name, which we did kind of learn that before. It's, how do you pronounce it? Taweret? Or
Taweret or something like that, yeah.
Taweret, yeah, something like that. But she's supposed to be like the guide for the realm of the dead.
Right.
And I guess we get to see, which I thought was, I did like the special effects in this movie, in this particular episode. I will say that it is confusing as far as what is reality and what isn't reality, which I think the story, I'm guessing that it's purposely leaning this way.
Sure.
Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, you think so?
I do.
Because it's like you're at the point now whether what's real. You know, are they really in the asylum, or is because we get this series with Taweret where she grabs Mark and Steven's hearts to weigh them.
Right.
You know, and the scales don't balance. And so that's kind of almost like what we had with Harrow, right? He does the scales, right?
Yeah. Right. That's right.
So for a different reason in a different way, but still it's kind of a similar type of situation, except that supposedly, or they find out, I guess, at the very beginning of this episode that they're both dead. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It sort of did get a little bit freaky there. But like I said, I love the special effects on this. The ship was really cool, I thought. And the desert scene was great.
Yep.
And it's like just through the doors, there's the asylum.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I think that's where we kind of got our story to unfold deeper, where we get more into their lives, because Taweret tells them that they have time to try to balance the scales.
Right.
You know, so they go back into the asylum to find ways that they can get them balanced.
Right. Yeah, and I think that is something that is, I think, a divergence from typical Egyptian mythology. I think the idea behind the scales is that it's not a balancing, it is actually more of a measure of a person's moral acts. So if their moral acts are, they're light, if their heart, you know, as the person commits more sins, their heart gets heavier. And so the idea is that your heart needs to be lighter than a feather in order for you to go peacefully into the afterlife.
Right, to the field of reeds, I think it's called, right?
Yeah. But the difference here is that there's it's not necessarily you have to be lighter than a feather, the feather of truth. That you have to be balanced, which is more like your mental health needs to be balanced, right? They're kind of, I think, recasting it, and the only way for Mark slash Steven to do that is to explore some repressed memories that Mark had growing up.
Right, and which kind of lends it more towards the asylum being a real place. That's what they were trying to, Harrow as Dr. Harrow was trying to do.
Yep.
Because we did get a portion where he's back with Dr. Harrow and he's wanting to talk with Stephen and saying that he hasn't been able to talk with Stephen for a long time.
Right.
And so what did you think about the way that story went with we learned that he has a brother, right? Or he had a brother.
Right.
And I don't know, I kind of looked at that and thought, wow, as a parent, you're, if something happens that you have no control over, he was just a child.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother totally, in this depiction, totally blamed him for his brother's death.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of speaks to the other part of mental illness, is that there is at least some evidence that suggests that some versions of mental illness are genetic. And so it would stand to reason that if his mother, if Mark's mother struggled with mental illness, then she could have passed that down to him as well. So I think that kind of speaks to that, and makes some sort of sense to me.
Okay. Well, yes, and as we kept going on, we do then all of a sudden get the origin story for Stephen, where he came from. Right? Which I guess he was from a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or they try to depict that. And we learn at that time, we have seen through most of this episode that the mother blamed him. The mother didn't want to have anything to do with him.
Right.
But at this particular time, we actually see that his mother was physically abusive to him.
Right.
Which I guess that's how Stephen got brought out.
Right.
And so Stephen's still under the impression that his mother is sweet and still alive.
Right.
Yeah. So that is another particular thing. First, we had to deal with Mark's loss of his brother and his mother's blaming him.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to deal with, all these different factions. And we saw that by him dealing with it, that the scale was getting a little closer to being balanced.
Right.
And then we get to Stephen, and we're back in with Dr. Harrow.
Yeah.
And he's trying to convince him that, his mother is dead.
Right.
And he's like, oh no, I talk to my mother every day, and we get to that realization, and it looks to me like the scales are balanced.
Mm-hmm.
But evidently not quite balanced, because then we go back to the ship and Taweret tells them, oh, well, we're almost there and you didn't balance the scales.
Yeah.
And then it gets a little off the wall, because we've got some characters. I don't know what you could call them. I guess the dead.
Yeah.
And they're coming up on the ship to take them off.
Right.
So we get a fight, and Mark is still trying to protect Steve,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And but that's not how it works, And Steven actually joins in the fight, and he goes over the side.
Yeah, well, I think he realizes that for the past 4.5 episodes, we thought that Steven was the weak one and Mark was the strong one, and Mark was protecting Steven. What we find out is that it's the exact opposite, right? That Steven was created specifically to protect Mark from the abuse that he was experiencing. So, that's part of the dissociative identity disorder.
Yes, I know, it's blew me away, that part. And then also the part that we also went through, I forgot to mention, was when he was a mercenary.
Yes.
And he became Khonshu's avatar.
Right, which, we kind of talked about that and theorized that was the case. So
yes, but it looked like to me he had said that his mercenary friend had killed Layla's father, mm-hmm. and also shot him.
Right.
But we saw in this that it looked like he was going to kill himself.
Right, but he was already mortally wounded.
Yeah. So
I mean, he literally crawled up to the altar of Khonshu, and he was bleeding out.
And it was kind of just crazy. That was our one shot of Moon Knight in this mm-hmm. episode.
Yeah.
But as you said, Steven was the one to eventually fall overboard as he's taking the dead with him.
Right.
And he gets consumed by the desert or whatever plane that is. And all of a sudden the scales are balanced.
Right.
And this episode ends with Mark in the field of reeds.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, so now there's got to be some speculation in your mind about what's going to happen in episode 6.
Yeah, they have a lot of ground to cover. And I think from what I saw is that this is actually going to be the shortest episode. So I have no idea how they're going to wrap all this up, because the other thing that they were going to do is they needed to get a message out to Layla to free Khonshu. Because even if he were to go back to the land of the living, he would be still dead because his body is still dead. So he needs, Khonshu to kind of help fix that situation. So,
right, he's not going to be able to come back to life without being Khonshu's avatar. So that was really, what you say is true, it's going to be the shortest episode. I'm at a loss. I don't know how they're going to cover all that ground in a little time, but Disney has done that before. Marvel has done it before in some of the other series that we've watched, where they've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. So mm-hmm. I guess if it's done properly, it'll work out. But overall, your impression of this episode?
It was fine. It was dark, like you said. I don't know if I don't know how I feel about the scale balancing thing. To me, that sounds kind of like I don't know. It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of in-world sense to me, that you need to balance the scales as opposed to you need to, yeah. So to me,
right. Well, I'm assuming that it has something to do with the Egyptian religion.
But to me, from my understanding, the Egyptian religion, that is not how it works.
And so this is just the writer's interpretation of how it should work?
No, it's their reimagining of how it would work.
All right. Okay.
It's similar to Thor. I think Thor is a great not counter example, but another example of this. But if we were to look at the true Nordic version of Thor,
Right.
he's not someone who self-sacrifices to be worthy or whatever. It's all about, he's kind of like this dumb strong guy who gets into a lot of messes. Then Odin, who's kind of a jerk about a lot of things and tricks him into these messes, and he kind of helps things get cleaned up afterwards. So it's not, there's definitely a in the Thor's case, there is a Judeo-Christian reimagining of that character, which I think is a good thing. I think it's kind of in the process of redeeming, stories of the old gods. Whereas this one, I think there is a reimagining of the old gods, but they're putting them into this weird, secular, psychosocial thing to me that doesn't make really a whole lot of sense. So.
Well, I would agree with you that, like you say, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I I just don't know if I could imagine living back in those days, uh, in where everybody, well, who do you pray to, or, you know,
Sure.
it kind of reminds me a little bit of the our episode that we did on Conan.
Yeah, yeah.
Where Subutai prayed to the four winds.
Right.
And he prayed to Crom. So
right.
Now we have.
Right.
But, in the case of Conan, he prayed to one god.
Yeah.
Whereas you had, in this case, there's all these gods that we're learning about, little by little. And I know we probably aren't going to get to all of them, but
no, we're not.
The fact is that I can't imagine growing up praying to a different God for a different reason,
Mm-hmm.
Well, but again, that's, I guess, being born and raised, to believe in one true God,
Sure. Yeah, so, yeah. And, if you want to get a good, interesting interaction between those two worldviews, I would recommend reading Acts chapter 17, verses 16 through, 32, where Paul goes to Athens. And there's an interesting thing that occurs there. So, anyway.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes, that would be a good read. I highly recommend that also. Wow. So, I did, like I said, best part of this to me was the special effects, the CG boat,
mm-hmm.
and some of that stuff. But other than that, it was just a real dark episode.
Yep.
Having to deal with one's sins. Can you imagine? Thank God that we have a savior that died for our sins. And hey, I got that covered, for you. To have to relive all that, is and try to figure it out yourself, not happening, right?
Yeah.
But was for me the only redeeming quality of this episode. I love the hippo.
Yeah.
But and I love the special effects, but all of the other stuff in the asylum and the different roads they went down.
Yeah.
I somehow feel that they could have got the same thing with less of that and told a little bit more of the story, got a little bit further along in the story, to visit all those different things. I think that they could have probably gotten away with not having to cover it so deeply, but I'm sure that they had their reasons for doing it that way, But other than that, for you, anything that stood out to you?
No, I think I said everything I wanted to say about it.
Yeah, now this is going to be a short episode, but
yeah,
there's not a lot in this. I spoke to a friend today in church. I asked him if he saw it yet, and he said no. But he says I found you guys online. He says I'm following you now. I said, well, you might want to catch up to the stories before you watch the last couple of episodes. So
yeah,
we'll see what he chooses to do. But all right, next week, episode 6, which is named TBA at the moment.
Yeah.
At the moment. I can't wait to see, and we'll wrap it up next week. Well,
maybe.
We'll see how it works out.
Yep.
All right. Very good.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in for another episode. We'll see you again next week. Till then, goodbye and God bless.
Goodbye, God bless, and tell your friends.